Okay, so afternoon. Welcome to this webinar. It's a series of webinars focusing on how to kind of save your business time and money through various different processes using a couple of different software. This specific webinar is all about automation. So actually how to automate your data processes using Alteryx. We've got another one of these sessions about automating your data processes, specifically with Tableau next week, which will give you kind of some information about that later in this talk. So what we're going to run through is how Alteryx is set up to automate your processes, why you might want to do that. We'll show a bit of a demo about how to actually approach that in both the solutions that Alteryx have. And then kind of what the options are. We'll also have a bit of a discussion about where automation might be useful for your business and kind of which solution to approach and kind of at what time along your journey with Alteryx. A nice quote here from Bill Gates about automation. First rule of any technology used in a business is that automation applied to efficient operation will magnify the efficiency. Second is that automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. So essentially, that's quite a good summary of where you might be along the journey of having Alteryx, or kind of trying to improve your data processing. So, if you've started to build out some of these workflows that really are having a massive saving in terms of man hours of churning through the same kind of reports, actually repeating the same manual process of reshaping data, of trying to connect different bits of information together. Once you build those workflows, that's that process done. You don't ever have to do that manual process again. But depending on the frequency of that, if those are daily or weekly processes, it can actually be a bit of a headache to still kind of open it up into Alteryx and actually have to run that through. Even if it's monthly, it can have a lot of take a lot of weight off your mind by just putting it on a schedule and automating it. You'll just know and have that kind of peace of mind that that bit of work is complete, it's finalized, it's now automated, it's adding data to a database, it's outputting data to a visualization somewhere, and that automated process is kind of complete. So what this webinar is going to go through is two of Alteryx's products. There's a product that's been around for about 10 years now, Alteryx Server, which you can use to schedule. And then there's a new product that they've released this year called the Analytics Hub. So they both have a server type function. So it's an application that's installed on a server, and it's where you can actually host workflows and host schedules. And the demo will go through kind of the products in a bit more depth and how you actually do that specific scheduling. So Alteryx is kind of, introduced some new messaging about how they see their platform. And what they're calling it is this analytic process automation. So this is quite a nice visual that they've got from some of their marketing material that actually shows kind of what it's all about. So you kind of bring in your files and docs in the normal process into Designer. You might have some other applications and cloud sources. And then that bit in the sections, what you're probably familiar with. So whether you're doing data blending, whether you're doing your parsing of information, whether you're connecting to some APIs. And then there's some of those kind of more bespoke use cases. Are you doing some geospatial analytics? Are you adding some kind of AI and machine learning? That bit in this section is probably what you're familiar with from Alteryx Designer. And then you're going to be publishing that into the actual hub itself. So publishing those workflows up and then starting to automate those. And the outcomes of that is that you can get data directly to some of the stakeholders. You can productionalize some of your AI. It's a lot easier to govern and manage. There's some data lineage that you'll have in there. So a lot easier to kind of visualize the process that you're doing in that middle section via this new hub product. So effectively what they're trying to do with the hub platform here is enable scheduling and automation, as well as collaboration, of course. So you've got all the building blocks you've got in Designer. You've got that workflow that you've built that's a really important business process. You publish that up to the Analytics Hub. and then you can schedule that to run on whatever cadence you like. So anything repetitive or complex, you kind of free those people from doing those manually. And yeah, a couple of different use cases for actually how to kind of time those things as well. As I mentioned, Alteryx Server has been around for a while, and that has the same processes. So it has that same ability to schedule workflows. These two softwares are completely separate. They are different offerings. They're different products entirely. And so at the end of this webinar, we're actually going to have a bit of a discussion about where one might be useful, where you might come across it, and kind of some of the concepts about what each software is good for, and just kind of talk about the story about where Alteryx have kind of come from and got to, and why they're actually releasing this new analytics hub server solution. So as you can see here, it's pretty similar messaging for Alteryx Server. You can automate and schedule your analytic process. And so it has quite a few use cases, as I've discussed. I'm just going to hand over to my colleague, Chris, who's just going to talk about a journey that a company has been on, one of our clients that actually have come through and started off fairly kind of light touch with some designers, and actually now are using Alteryx Server to actually automate some of their processes.
Hey folks, so yeah, my name's Chris Love. I work as an account manager here at the Information Lab. I've used Alteryx for 15 years, I think. So I used to be a customer long before I worked for the Information Lab. So we could talk a bit about that history in a little while, but I wanted to talk today just about a customer I've been working with in the utilities sector, because I think they provide a really nice flavor of the kind of journey organizations will go on with their analytics process automation. So this utilities company were an existing Tableau user. They had a lot of reports that they were building, but the data that fed those reports was quite a manual process to build. They were spending a long time in Excel building out pieces of the data. So they were spending hours building out regulatory reports to send back to the regulators to support their business. It was things they had to send back every week. And they had quite large teams of people who were all looking at this data, as well as typical things like the people on the phones, the contact centers, what scores they were getting from some of the surveys they did there, and having to report that back up to board members and things. And so, as you can imagine, there was a lot of data crunching having to happen underneath. And we worked with them, and they got a couple of UltraX designer licenses to help support their data flows. So they were able to bring in some of those Excel inputs and those files that they downloaded off the systems. And they were able to replicate what they were doing in Excel and take a lot of the work that those 2 or 3 analysts that I initially started working with to help just take the load off their plates. So we took their work down from just working kind of 5 days a week on a lot of these processes, and took about 2 or 3 days off their week just by automating all these different bits and pieces that we were having to do that. And they were running that through the UltraX designer by pressing play. And as is typical of organizations that start using this, they quickly found they were then able to help other people out with some of their reporting. And so they take different pieces off different teams. Very quickly, they were picking up some reporting that needed to be run quite early in the morning. So they were having to come into work and 7 o'clock in the morning and press play on some of these things. So quite long running processes to get them running for the people who were coming in at 9 o'clock. As you can imagine, this led to quite a difficulty managing that. There's only 3 people in this team. They're trying to manage the different pieces of work, decide between themselves who can jump off childcare duty and run this, or get the remote working so they can do it from home, or manage when people are ill. It just became too much of a difficulty. At the same time, they were building longer and longer processors that were taking longer and longer to run on their machines. So they were finding that they'd reached kind of a natural limit on their ability to do more and more work for these external teams that they were getting. Now, those other teams were getting UltraX and starting to build that up, but we were still seeing far too much dependence on these three people and their machines, as well as the reports needing to run earlier and earlier in the morning. And so UltraX Server, in their case, was able to take some of that load off. They were able to justify it to their management team based on the fact they'd saved so much work already. They were able to then publish those reports up and get them running overnight, which took a lot of load off the system early in the morning for those early reports. So they could run them rather than at 7 o'clock in the morning, run them at 3 o'clock in the morning when the data was available. And they could then start automating some of those long-running processes. They obviously ran a little bit quicker on the machine, and everything worked a lot quicker. It also helped with their reporting of those tasks, because if someone was ill, anyone could see what hadn't run, and we were able to quickly download it and fix whatever was needed, so that it just enabled sharing across the team as well. So, and I think that's a pretty typical journey as people start using UltraX Desktop. They'll build out what they can on desktop and start running that, but quickly run into a need to automate some of this and get it off their desktop. And so I thought it was interesting sharing that ahead of Phil's demo. So back to you, Phil.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think really nicely shows a good journey that we've experienced, and it is quite a common one that I've seen myself as well. Okay, so over to the actual products and a demo of the two platforms. So I'll start with UltraX Server, so the product that's been around for a while, and just run you through the process of actually starting to automate a workflow. This is a workflow that I've built for a couple of football clubs that takes some quite complicated XML data, passes out to JSON, and then actually just combines it up and creates a really nice table of just a clean data set. So just a clean data set with all the events that might happen throughout a game. So where a free kick was taken, where a yellow card was given, where a goal was scored, all that kind of good stuff. And so I might want to run this every match day. So I get that data after every match. I just want to automate this process so that it runs every weekend. And then I've got my post-match analysis that I can start analyzing. So you may have noticed in Designer that there's these schedule options. And so it's here where you'd actually just come to schedule a workflow. That then asks for information of a server. So we have Alteryx Server installed in the cloud, and this is the actual location, the URL for that server. So you can add an extra gallery here, and then you just need the URL, just kind of like any other application to upload it to. So once I click that through, it effectively goes through a system of publishing that specific workflow. So that workflow now sits on this gallery. And then it gives me the configuration screen for the scheduler. So I can call this schedule XML parsing. And then I can choose the options of how frequently I want to set that. So I can just have it as a one-off run. So I can say, I know that I want to run this on match day on the weekend. So I'll just choose Saturday at 1 p.m. And then it will just run at that specific date. So you could set these schedules up in advance when you know that certain events are going to happen. What may be more useful is to do a recurring schedule. Have it daily, weekly, monthly, on a specific day. So fairly intuitive and fairly easy to set up. And easy to kind of manage. So once I've done that, I'll set this for hourly. You'll see the screen for this specific schedule, and it's easy for someone to come in and edit this. One thing just to kind of note is if you're an admin of the server, you just need to make sure that your users have the ability to schedule things. So the administration is fairly intuitive as well. It's fairly easy to set up, but you need to be quite yeah, you just need to set it up appropriately so that people can actually do some of these jobs, so scheduling things. Once that's activated, then you have access to these here as well. If I come to my results, that'll show me my kind of scheduled workflow. I kind of did one prior to this webinar to just show you like how it would actually look when they've been scheduled repeatedly. So this one's kind of running every 10 minutes. It will show you if there's any kind of warnings messages. It gives you the information about the actual workflow. So you're actually getting quite a useful amount of information if you wanted to kind of govern this workflow. So you'll start seeing probably like a little warning flag if it hasn't run as intended. So then again, if you wanted to kind of actually come in here and edit it, then you can actually go ahead and edit that schedule itself. So it'll be here in the schedules. So as you can see, this is the list of the different schedules that we have on our server. It's easy to then come in and actually go and change that schedule. So if I wanted to change when it's running, or, you know, say with something like the football example, because, you know, there's different matches, sometimes it's Saturday, sometimes it's Sunday, you might just want to pre-arrange this schedule. You can edit it and just say, okay, I want it to be next weekend now. You wouldn't have to redo the schedule over and over. So there's obviously a lot of other features of Server, but I kind of wanted to just focus on the scheduling for this specific call, because this is what we're trying to say, is that one of the most important use cases really is for actually scheduling and actually going from where you're having to manually run workflows that could be taking up to an hour or 2 hours. You're going to be able to save kind of a lot of headache by actually automating these workflows. Just to kind of give you an overview though, here, there's kind of these are the workflows that you can see. There's these studios that you can kind of put things into, but I'm not going to spend any time on that because that's kind of going towards some of the other functionality of Server. So simple enough, hopefully, as you can see. I'm now going to move over to the other solution that Alteryx has, Alteryx Analytics Hub. And this is the interface for that hub. You have to go through the same process of publishing your workflow and scheduling it from Alteryx Designer. I'm just skipping that bit because as I'll go through a bit later, there are different ways that this hub is licensed. So actually you get a hub designer license. We'll talk through some of the nuances about that a bit later. Where hub is quite interesting as well and quite exciting is it's actually combined a couple of the different solutions that Alteryx currently has into this one server. So you may have heard of a product called Alteryx Connect. The data, and that actually gives you a lineage and a data catalog that you can actually run through. Okay, where did this data source come from? What workflow, what data is used in a workflow? Who manages that? Who's actually last updated that data? So some really quite interesting stuff for governing your data process. And that's already included in Hub. With Alteryx Server, it's actually it's an additional add-on. So what I've tried to do here is actually consolidate some of the products that they've got into one. The scheduling is relatively straightforward. It's just under this job section, gives you the results and gives you the schedules that are actually scheduled on this server. As I mentioned, this is a product that's come out this year, so it's not as developed for us internally as the Alteryx Server. So we've only got a couple of things scheduled. But again, it's interesting to kind of see some of the results. Yeah, this has got some warning, and it's just some warnings within the actual workflow itself. So you can see those running logs again. I think it's just saying that some of those fields aren't possible. But effectively, what this workflow does is it runs every 30 minutes. And updates this dashboard. So it's out. We've done a kind of analysis looking into some of the COVID cases across UK, and every half hour it's pretty much updating from a data source. So this is just going to buffer and showing kind of where the live cases are at the moment. You can see that kind of new peak coming up in November, and then across the different local authority tiers. So you know it works. It's relatively easy to manage. Just going to kind of show a couple of other things here. There's that data catalog that's kind of, you have to set up what's within the database, but you can kind of see who's the owner, when it's been updated, all that kind of useful stuff, and start interrogating in actually, you know, some of these data sources, which workflows they're in. So hopefully, as you can see, it's a pretty intuitive system. It gives you a bit of kind of data analytics on the server as well. And it's actually quite a fresh look and a fresh way of organizing it compared to what we've been using in the server. So really quite a nice product that they've brought out. So that's kind of showing the two platforms. That's kind of showing how you do it manually in Alteryx Server, and just showing that you can do the same process and have that same managed scheduling in this new analytics hub as well. So just to overview the actual licensing costs for Hub, it's the pricing that we've got from them is that it's £57,000 per year. And that actually comes with some designer licenses. As I said, with Hub, you need specific Hub designer licenses to be able to share and publish data sources, publish workflows, and schedule those workflows. So it is a separate offering to the current designers that you have. And so that will definitely feed into when or why you might want to consider Analytics Hub. It also comes with 10 Analytic Hub user licenses. So those would be people that don't need a designer license, but might want to come into the server and actually run one of those schedules or run a job to then actually get data to update in, say, a Tableau dashboard, or actually just download a CSV themselves. So in comparison to Alteryx Server is £62,000 a year. So about £5,000 more. But that is a single license for Alteryx Server. And so any of the designers you'd need to add separately. So there would be additional costs for designers. One thing that's slightly different though with the gallery, the Alteryx Server, which is also known as the gallery, is that those Hub user licenses, that those don't exist. You can actually have kind of an unlimited usage. So there's slight different ways that it can be used, and it's set up slightly differently. But I think as a new offering, because it kind of bundles in a few licenses with it, I think this is quite a considerably more attractive offering than just the the server on its own. If you currently have 3 or 4 designer licenses, then actually that cost there is kind of consumed within this Analytics Hub cost, and then you get the scheduled workflows as well. So an interesting new offering, I think. So I'm just going to kind of come out of this presentation, and Chris and I are just going to talk through a few of the things about automation and really try to highlight the difference between server and hub and kind of where it's come about. So I'm just going to start sharing. I think my door's going as well. So let me just ask a question first, and then Chris can answer it while I mute. So just give me 2 seconds. So Chris, can you just tell us the journey about Alteryx Server and Hub? So where they brought Server in and why you think Hub's kind of come about?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Phil. So yeah, as I say, I've been using Alteryx for about 15 years now. Back when I first started using Alteryx Designer, we had the Alteryx Designer functionality didn't come with Alteryx Server, so we had to use the APIs, the command line processors underneath Alteryx, and automate a lot of that. So Alteryx Server then came in and used a lot of that functionality. Alteryx built that from their own public gallery and built something that was able to do a lot of that work for us. So it completely automated the testing. As I say, it's about 10 years in the making. It's something that has been really built out through that period. So it's battle tested. You've got customers across the world using Alteryx Server now, and it's stable. It covers the whole plethora of Alteryx use cases that you might need. It's also supporting a huge percentage of Alteryx's revenue as well. It's got strong growth in the marketplace, and it's got that big install base, which means that it's kind of natural to ask the question, well, why do we need to get another product? Why did Alteryx feel the need to build this other product, Alteryx Hub?
Right.
And I think the main reason behind that is if you look at what Alteryx have done over the last 10 years in building Server, they've they built out server. It's been built in, obviously, to satisfy the needs of the current Alteryx user. But then they've also purchased another company, an acquisition that built what then later became Alteryx Connect. And that is a separate product that, again, lots of people have that installed and they're purchasing that and building that. But what UltraX Hub allows them to do is take both those products and kind of move on into the next decade, if you like. So, you know, it takes some of those user experience that we've got in UltraX Connect and UltraX Server. It really brings them much more modern, allows them to, if you like, refactor those and present them in a new, more modern tech stack, rather than continue to build on that legacy environment. It allows them to build some APIs in there right from the start, which I know is something that a lot of people have been asking for in UltraX Server, the ability to use RESTful APIs to automate a lot of that work, perhaps creating users and setting up the environment from scratch. It allows UltraX to move into, if you're a Tableau server user, you'll know the sites paradigm, if you like, the ability to segment off different areas of the server for different use cases. And this UltraX Hub allows them to do that as well, because they built it from the ground up with that in mind. They've been able to do that. So it really,
I suppose an important point on that as well, Chris, is that allows you to then have a testing site, right? Which has been a bit of an issue at the moment with Alteryx Server, is that you do need an additional server to do any testing of kind of how you're going to lay out things. So that really is a nice improvement.
Yeah, that's right. So I think it really sets people up to kind of move forward, perhaps who couldn't embrace the automation in the past. Hub presents that approach that perhaps they can start thinking about that now.
That's great. So what would you recommend to somebody that's at that stage? They've got workflows that are taking a long time to run. They've reached that critical point. What would your advice be at the moment? Because we presented two solutions at the moment. What do you usually kind of communicate?
I think it's a difficult decision. I think Alteryx have obviously they're not abandoning UltraX Server. This is still a product they'll continue to support and move forward with. But what's very clear to us at the Information Lab is that the Alteryx Analytics Hub is the product that they're moving forward with long term, and I expect a lot of things to slowly move over to Analytics Hub as time goes by, and that leaves new customers with a bit of a decision to make, as you say, around which way do you go. And I think if you're a small customer who's just starting to use UltraX, you've got to the point where you're building things out, as you say, and you don't particularly, you're not a big bank with big security restrictions that perhaps might find a new product like UltraX Hub really difficult to implement, because it's not perhaps as battle tested as UltraX Server, and perhaps you need that site functionality where you can split things up. Then I think jump into a conversation with us. We can then really dive into the detail of your needs and check that UltraX Hub is the right approach. But given the cost is slightly lower, particularly if you've got that 4 or 5 users, then I really think that's the approach we'd start. However, if you do need that really strict security implementation, or you need high availability, then we're probably going to bring you back to UltraX Server, which, as I say, continues to be supported for the future, and we can talk about that and make sure you get that working.
Yeah, no, great, and I think it's worth mentioning as well that the hardware requirements are identical across the two as well. So it's not that you need more processing for Hub or anything either. So really it is down to your choice. And I think when I've spoken to Alteryx about it before, it's exactly as you're saying. It's when it gets to a larger scale, when it needs stronger governance, that's where UltraX Server will really sit in that space, where it is a bit more of a productionized thing. Analytics Hub gives you that power, it gives you collaboration, it gives you automation, but at a reasonable kind of price point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you're sat there and you're struggling to look at your existing data and reports, you're perhaps running everything on Designer, but then you've got a colleague who's, building and changing that, and you're struggling to see changes that they've made, then Analytics Hub is going to allow you to bring those different pieces together. You'll be able to share those assets, search across them, allow other people in your organization to do that and really share that, and not feel like you're duplicating work or kind of wasting time on that. So it enables you to move forward and automate a lot of that at the same time as taking advantage of some of those sharing and searchable stuff as well.
Great. And I think, that there's kind of some like use case type thing, or kind of like, a user-based type story that I think that might be useful to kind of share. So there might be certain business roles or job roles that are fit for Hub, and where what's best for a business unit, what's best for a manager, what's best for an IT person. Can you talk through those sort of roles and where that fits with the platform?
Yeah, I think it's I guess it's thinking about, depending on what role you're in, you might see different justification for bringing in that automation. So, if you're seeing teams as a manager or leader within your organization, and you're really seeing your teams with UltraX Designer are taking too long to meet those requests, or they haven't got the processing power on their machines, then I think that's the time to start thinking about that automation. Or you're asking your team to do things earlier in the morning and they're really struggling, or you have a small team and they're struggling with bandwidth with people being off or covering each other, then that's the time to look at either of these products and think about that automation piece and stepping forwards. If you're in IT, and you're concerned about the use of UltraX as a almost, you might be looking at it thinking, how do I stop these rogue processes that people are running? How do I get back in control of that? People are doing some great work out there, but I'm starting to worry that we haven't got it under control. Then the server and Analytics Hub platforms can really help you just bring that back into a more managed, governed environments. That's what these platforms do. So, you can take away those concerns, bring them back into a more managed environment, start looking at the logs and things, and also then just add governance around when are these things being run, who can see them, what are the results being made, and manage them properly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen it firsthand myself. A data table changes, or you're restructuring your data. That breaks 3 or 4 workflows. You've got no idea which workflows might be broken by updates. Not having that data lineage, not having a better kind of governance leads to all sorts of headaches and a lot of late nights trying to update and fix workflows, which I've experienced myself. So yeah, being able to actually to see those things, know which workflows are going to be affected by any changes, it really just takes it kind of to the next level.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, thanks for that discussion. I think that's really useful and hopefully has answered any questions that people might have. But what we want to move now to is just a Q&A. So if there's any questions, if you've got any questions in the audience, just put them in the chat and we can try and answer them. We're going to go back to the presentation now just to kind of finish on the last slide as well.
We do have a couple of questions, Phil. So I think Chris spoke a little bit about if you're kind of newer to Alteryx and choosing between UltraX Server and UltraX Hub. But what if someone's an existing UltraX Server customer? Should they be looking to move to UltraX Hub for their next renewal?
So yeah, I think it's really important to note that at the moment, there is not a migration methodology. So there isn't a way to copy and paste what you have in Server to Hub. And that's because it really is a different platform. One fundamental difference is that UltraX Server uses MongoDB as the kind of back end and for storing some logs. Analytics Hub uses Postgres. So there's already quite fundamental differences. I can't say whether that's going to change in the future. I'd imagine as Alteryx develop the hub, they are going to want to move people towards it because it's a consolidated product. But I don't know. Yeah. I think for existing server customers, there's still the functionality that you may require from that. If there's a new division or a new team that's looking into it, Analytics Hub could fit within that, because it's quite a really easy way to kind of get very up to speed and start automating things within a business unit very quickly. Chris, what do you think on that question?
Yeah, I agree. I think the UltraX Hub is a very new product. UltraX Server isn't going away anywhere. It's you know, got a usage into the future. So I think, you know, yes, the long-term ambition is to bring these two products together, but there's no need for people to rush over to Analytics Hub if they're existing UltraX Server customers. I think they should continue. Let's let Analytics Hub mature and get that migration path sorted out, and then we can advise and work with people as they do that. If people do have concerns or want to chat about their particular use case, then obviously we're always, I think that those are the kind of things where we need detailed discussions just to understand motivation and why people might want to do that. So feel free to get in touch.
Great, thanks. And another question. So both options are pretty expensive. Is there any other way that people could automate their workflows without those products? I
think just justifying UltraX Server or UltraX Hub is going to be a challenge. It's not a small, low-cost item, and so yeah, I completely see why someone might see that as being expensive. I think from experience, you need some solid use cases, and you need some ways of explaining those to management around how UltraX is helping you and how your skills have developed when you've started using UltraX Designer. You're not going to be able to justify the purchase of a £57,000 UltraX Hub license by just saying, I need to automate one or two things that I'm doing weekly. So the points that we see people need to start automating things are for two reasons, really. It's because they want to take advantage and run things a lot quicker than they currently can on their desktop. So moving things to the server will often just take away that pain of things running slowly. And also because they need to run things at different times or with different regularity than they can. If you're having to sit there and press a button every 5 minutes because your manager's asked for you for some data to report, that's where you need to start getting into that conversation. And so I think that my advice would be, if it seems expensive, then let's jump. We've got lots of experience at the Information Lab around having these conversations, around helping you justify the route to automation and why it is such a shift for organizations, and how to deal with some of the objections as well, that if you're a leader, you might get from IT, or if you're an analyst, you might get from your senior team. So we can help you justify that. We're experienced in building out use cases and packs that can help sell that into your business, and we can also advise when it might not be right as well, and where you can get more benefit from just using your existing UltraX designers. So leave that with us and bring the questions to us, and we're happy to chat about that, I think is the answer there.
So the next question, I think you've kind of answered already, but just in case there's anything else you want to say on it. So if someone's already is an existing designer user, at what point do you think they need to think about UltraX Server?
I think it comes down to just quantity of work. You know, the timescales can be very variable. You know, you could even be using it for a year and you've only got 3 or 4 key workflows that you're running. So for me, it comes down to quantity of processes. So if you really are, you know, clicking on 10, 20 workflows, they each take an hour, some take 5 minutes. Already there's an organizational aspect to that. There's the risk of, you know, one of those people that are running those workflows leaving the company, whatever it might be. and so actually reducing that headache of having numerous workflows needing to be run on demand and not having any way of governing it. I also see it in terms of quantity of users. So if you have a team of 5 or 6, you're expecting one person to update a workflow and run it. They haven't done that. You're using data from that workflow in your workflow. That sort of element which needs a bit more guidance and process and collaboration, really. That's where both these platforms sit really well, because you can set up these collections, you can set up folders to store workflows and just have a better process to how that's managed. So for me, it's quantity. It's when you've got enough running that there's the risk of something being missed.
And I think it's a similar answer in some ways to, we work with a lot of Tableau server customers. People will have gone through the same process with Tableau. They'll have been working with a handful of desktop licenses. They'll then need to automate some of that data or some of the worksheets. Think back to when you were doing that, and I think a lot of the answers will be the same as well. When you could stop sending things out via PDF and etc., then I think it's a very similar approach.
Cool. And so we've got one more question at the moment, unless anyone else wants to send any more in. What's the best way of trialing Server and Hub?
I could take that one, Phil, if you want. There are trials available for both products. You won't find them on Alteryx's website, so come and chat to us. We can work with you to work out the best way of doing that. We can give you a proper demo of the platforms, discuss your needs and work out which is the best one, and then work with you on the best way to trial that. So with dates where you're actually going to be able to use that, and then give you a good couple of weeks to use the platform and see what difference it could make to your automation, and then also advise on how you then transition that into a production environment as well. So as you do make those improvements over those couple of weeks, you're not got to throw away the environment. And we can also work with your IT team as well to provide a platform for that and help advise on some of the hardware requirements and things there. So please do just get in touch, and we can help with any aspect of that trial process.
Great, thank you. I think, yeah, that's all of the questions for now.
Thanks, Steph. So just to highlight this last slide, there's a couple more presentations, webinars in this series. The next one will be covering that same kind of concept of automating data processes, but we're going to focus on Tableau's data management and how that can be really useful for automating and kind of what that adds to your server and adds to your own understanding of your data. The last session is about data science. So it's how data science can actually be used to save your business time and money. That link at the bottom there, till.bi/talkdata is where to find the registration for those. But yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for your time this afternoon, and have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.